chair and vice chair. Do we have any cards for public comment? Okay, just received one magically. So we have public comment from Phil Compton. I think we have 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Is that correct? Okay.
Sure.
Mr. Compton.
Thank you. I spoke to the Finance and Performance Management Committee. I just want to share with you something that some of you have seen, Mr. Johnson, Mr. Dayton, and just for your own information, regarding the electric bus option, which PSDA is now looking at. Motion was just made, will be brought forward to the board next week to pursue a grant in order for PSDA to begin acquiring such buses. So here's some information from Sierra Club and from the manufacturer that PSDA has decided it would like to work with, which is Proterra from Greenville, South Carolina, who makes these buses and has more of these buses on the road than any other company in the United States. Just wanted to share that with you. This was based, the information here is based on industry averages and also based on the presumption that they would be putting in a bid for 7 replacement buses. The great thing about these buses that you should know is that when you consider all the costs of acquiring them, fueling them, and maintaining them, that your cost of ownership, your total cost of ownership is the lowest of any bus that you can possibly buy today. When you look at, of course, the environmental benefits, that's a simple thing. You might call it a no-brainer. 0 emissions. You can't beat that. Diesel buses have gotten a lot cleaner, but a diesel bus is still going to put out 15, 20, 25 million pounds of carbon over its lifetime. The electric bus, of course, is going to put out 0. But it's more, it goes beyond that. It's the mileage, the fuel economy, 22 miles per gallon versus, we heard this morning earlier, as much as 8 for a type of diesel hybrid. That's great, but you can't beat 22 versus 4 for the diesel buses that you have right now. So the fuel cost savings are going to be anywhere from 182, maybe with the VAE bus that we're talking about now, 150. We don't know that, up to $270,000 over what you have right now. The big savings also is in maintenance, anywhere from $145,000 to $317,000 over the life of these buses. The return on investment is realized very quickly. When you're doing long-term planning for the future of this agency and its operating, you need to look at the new technology which has emerged in the past year. The price has gone down several $100,000. One reason for this is that you might have heard in China they have a little problem with smog. And in China, manufacturers like BYD, who was here a month ago with a demonstration bus, they are selling 1,000 at a time in places like Shanghai. So like any technological device, production has gone up, the price is coming down rapidly, like your cell phone and everything else, and the performance is improving at a really rapid pace. Also in here is an email that Mr. Barkley received last night. The question, a very interesting question, is which routes do we have that these buses might work on? You've got that.
Thank you, Mr. Compton.
And I'll share this with you, and I look forward to talking to you about it.
Appreciate it. Do they address the range issue in that
Absolutely.
information? Okay.
Absolutely. Yes.
Thank you so much. Any other public comments? Seeing none, we'll move on to our presentation from Ray Shermonte of TBARTA. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm going to try to go a little faster. I know you guys are behind, and some of you have seen this before, so I'm going to add some new information, and certainly we'll be able to answer any questions you have at the end of the presentation. As I've learned, this is a very complicated region, much more complicated than places like Jacksonville and Orlando, because we have 2 major counties that aren't really suburbs to each other. Orlando's one place with a lot of suburbs. We are different. I kind of put these gears together in size related to the population and the complexity of our region, but we are a region, and we do work together. And it's very important that we look at our regional projects in that context. We have 4 parts to the TBARTA plan now. We have priorities, future priorities, the incorporation of the 2040 MPO regional projects, and then longer range needs that are also in the MPO plans. So we have the MPO plans for the first time June when this was adopted, incorporated into the TBARTA plan. Top projects. Most of these projects are related to what you hear called the TBX lanes, which are somewhat controversial. I will tell you there's going to be a big MPO meeting in Hillsborough. The second one, they've had night meeting with a lot of public involvement. I have come to the conclusion, and I was not a big supporter 2 years ago when they started this, I am totally convinced that we absolutely do need to do this now, that I have a better understanding of how traffic in this region moves. We have 75,000 retirees that live in the 7 counties that go to MacDill Air Force Base often to shop, to get medical care at the VA hospitals in both Hillsborough and Pinellas. The TBX lanes that would go from about Fowler on I-275 across the Howard Franklin Bridge, including your new lanes that are being rebuilt in Gateway, and including beginning to go out I-4, are the absolute core of transportation in this region. We also have people, tremendous amounts of people that come in and use our airport. Local residents of our region only make up 39% of our airport passengers, which means about 50,000 people a day coming into Tampa International Airport from various directions, but all using the interstate lanes. And then we have another 61% that are coming from other parts of the country that are tourists coming into TIN, dispersing into the 7 counties. That's just 2 major regional things that both Hillsborough and Pinellas are at ground zero for. So it's very important. The good thing about the express lanes is they're going to provide the opportunity for express buses, very similar to the Miami system, which are very well used in that area. Other things are getting a West Shore Intermodal Center done and some other scattered projects throughout more distant parts of the region. But the core in the next 5-year work plan is to really make some progress on these top priorities. Future priorities. This is a new category. A couple things in Pinellas County that are there regarding transit is the Beach Express and Central Avenue, both important projects, a number of other projects in different counties. Certainly the expansion of the express lanes farther out toward the east, toward Polk County, and building on that thing. Looking at some maybe demonstration bus projects, TBARTA with FDOT is doing a study of the Suncoast Corridor, which connects the West Shore and downtown area, would connect it up to the northern counties. And certainly that's a candidate that we should be open-minded to, because that's the first part of our express system that will be done next year with an express lane that could be used for buses in that corridor. And again, some of these are vetted with the MPOs. I, having been an MPO director, feel there needs to be a much stronger connection between TBARTA and the MPOs, and have been working on making that happen. I mentioned the MPO plans. I'm going to go through these very quickly. These are all in your adopted MPO plans. These are the major issues. I will tell you, discussion taking place now with Hillsborough, Pinellas, and Pasco. TMA group, which is a subcommittee of the MPOs, is maybe the joint use of CSX tracks in some areas. For the first time, CSX has identified which areas they'd be willing to talk about. There's a meeting taking place on November 6th at Atkins Engineering in Hillsborough County to discuss the next step in this issue with the MPO board members that will be representing each of the 3 counties, and we've asked Hernando County to join in, even though they're not part of the TMA subcommittee in this discussion. So you'll probably be hearing more about that. Again, this is a longer-term thing, not to interrupt other things we're working on sooner, but certainly something we need to begin to explore the possibilities of. Again, our roadway projects from the MPO plan that are regional in nature, our freight projects, all are now included in the TBARTA plan, putting all that together. You may be aware that the subcommittee of the Chairman's Coordinating Committee of the West Central Florida MPOs now is a subcommittee of TBARTA. And we are going to bring legislature forward to kind of, make that part of the TBARTA's legislation, that's included in there, and kind of rename the committees and all that. Now, all the MPO counties have already signed that via an interlocal agreement. Other thing TBARTA is working on, and I mentioned this to you before, is the van pool program and trying to expand that. We're working with Moffitt Cancer Center now, USF, to try to keep a couple vans going there. and expand that program with our new partner V-Ride, carpool ride matching, and the school commute program. We're trying to combine that. We have most in Hillsborough, some now in Pinellas, and we want to expand to the other counties in the region. So we're going to be working on expanding that. Right now we have 95 vans running in the van pool program. Two important projects. There was a big workshop that PSTA participated in last week, the Regional Fare Car Payment System, working with possible consultants. TBART has committed about $300,000 of a federal grant we have to this effort. The dream is to have all 8 counties, which would also include Polk, even though they're not part of TBART at this time, in this process to have one fare card that works on everybody's bus system. So no matter where a transit rider went in the area, they would be able to use the same card, kind of like a SunPass. One Bus Away expansion, this is something we have a partnership with right now with Hillsborough Crisis Center, where you can call and get information on whatever transit is available in any county that you are in the region from one number. So again, Qatar is working with us on this. We are looking at the technology that would be required in each bus system throughout the region. Right now, this is our budget, 60% federal, 40% state. Part of the problem with that is these are all grants, and I have been requesting local funding and have been somewhat successful in receiving that this year. So I'll be including that in future slides, kind of showing that how that all comes out as we go through that. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank
Yes.
you, Ray. Have some questions, Commissioner Long?
Well, yes, and without being terribly redundant, because I say this every time I have an opportunity.
Okay.
What, I saw that last point up there, that there's another study being done about expanding regionally. I think every organization in Tampa Bay has done a study, so why do we need
Yeah, I'm not
one?
sure which study you're talking about.
That's CUT,
Okay.
the study needs for expanding
Okay,
regionally?
okay, no,
I mean,
this, okay, let me explain what that study is. That is a Qatar study of all the transit agencies' technology to see how we can put the apps for the One Bus Away. It's a specific project that we have a federal grant for. It's not just a regional study. It's a specific project where they're going to work with each transit agency and see how their technology could be improved to incorporate this system universally throughout all 7 or 8 counties.
Is that like an Uber app for buses?
It's kind of like that, and we're kind of in the front of this, really, with Portland and other cities on this, and Qatar being a national research agency with USF, is looking at how we can do this. So this would be able to tell you where the bus is, and I know Pinellas is ahead on this, as is Hillsborough, because they've been working together. And this would try to expand it to the other 5 counties in the region also. So they could have the technology. We pick the technology, figure out what needs to be done, and then each transit agency is going to have to figure out whether they want to participate in it or not.
So it identifies where the bus is, but it doesn't...
It identifies where the bus is, exactly. And I got to tell you, in Hillsborough, it's really cut down on the amount of calls. If a person has a phone, they can see where the bus is, like it's 2 minutes away or 10 minutes away, and it doesn't create the thing, is the bus coming? They don't know where the bus is, that kind of thing. You know what's going on.
So we already have that, so this is just
You're-
integrating...
Right. It's expanding it, and actually to make it better, and yeah, you guys are working with Hillsborough on that. I think Hillsborough has the most, but you guys are working together. This is to expand it to the other 5 counties.
This is really another way to communicate with the riding public. So we want to make sure that people have the most information that they can when they're trying to ride the bus. And so we have our real time, and we have made huge investments in that, and that is a great system. This is one more tool in our toolbox. It is at no cost to us, through Qatar, and they are, that is a good thing. And it is really, as Ray said, integrating it regionally so that when we are putting together projects like the Regional Smart Card and the Regional Fare Payment Program, you can now use one fare media, one app, one thing. It really makes it great for our riding public. So this is one more way for people to get their information.
Well, if I
Go ahead.
could, Mr. Chair, so if I could just follow up that point that you just made is probably significant to message it in our legislative messaging when we talk to state and federal legislators, because as we know from our recent trip, they're all about regionalization. And had we known this a week and a half ago, it could have been really powerful. Point.
Yeah, and this is all kind of part of this regional fare card payment. Actually, TBARTA is paying for the study with Qatar because we have a grant that we got from the federal government on expanding commuter options and services, and we're using that to pay for this study.
Thank you, Commissioner Long. Mr. Chairman?
Thank you. One of the things that I think I've heard you saying that your organization is working on is branding, outreach to the community. That's one of our elements in our path forward, is to better communicate to the public, at least talking about when is it appropriate for transit to be used versus and how that fits. And I'm wondering if that's part of your program. It seems like that could be the sharing of information about where transit fits in the region, and to educate the public, to give them more information about how to use transit, when it makes sense for them.
Any comments?
Yeah, I think that's good, and that's not something specifically what you said that we're doing at this point. It's more talking about kind of what's going on in the different projects, but I think you're talking about an educational piece as to when transit makes sense, I guess, for people to use as an alternative to the car. That is something that we could look at doing, because part of our role is to educate the public, for sure.
And that would apply regionally.
Right.
Why, to understand when it makes sense.
Right.
Thank you. Commissioner Johnson?
Last evening, we had, we had a planning meeting in Pinellas Park, and our MPO chairman, our new chairman, was there. And one of the things that was discussed was the CSX plan, or plan to have a plan.
I plan to have a plan's better.
So one of the things that I was wondering is there a time frame? Is this a pipe dream, or is this something that we will vigorously explore?
Okay, I will tell you just my background. I've been involved in this discussion for over 30 years, literally, because I did a research project in college in 1981 on it with the director of the department. So I have to say that this is the most interest I've seen from elected officials via the TMA, which is 3 MPO members from Pasco, Pinellas, and Hillsborough. Now Hernando's going to get involved. I think timing is everything, and maybe it is time. We've tried 2 other things in both counties. That didn't work. I think we need to look at our existing assets and figure out how we can build upon them. And frankly, before, CSX never definitively said that we could do this. This is what's changed. They came out, I was actually shocked when they made the presentation. They sent me an email when we were doing the TBARTA plan saying, we'll take these rail lines off because you're never going to be able to use them, but these 2 you might be able to. But it was just an email, but they never said it like at a meeting, and they had a whole PowerPoint presentation. And in fairness to them, they did always tell us, don't talk to us about this until we get Sunrail going. Well, Sunrail's going now, and maybe they just felt it was time to publicly state. And what they said was the Clearwater Sub, it's called, which goes from about Bush Boulevard and Florida Avenue in Hillsborough County, west through Town and Country, West Chase, Oldsmar, Safety Harbor, Clearwater, down through Pinellas Park, and into St. Petersburg is one line that they would consider talking about. The other is going from about 7th Avenue in Ybor City around 30th Street all the way to Brooksville. Those 2 lines they would talk about joint use on. The South Tampa line that goes along and goes down to Gandy Boulevard, they won't say either way. The other lines, no. There's too much port traffic. There's too much traffic going down to Manatee for Tropicana. They can't share those. So for the first time we know, okay, if we're going to think about this, then this is where we need to think and figure out what to do. And actually maybe incorporate it with other transit modes to connect it, because you can tell it makes a big half circle, the missing piece being going from downtown Tampa to Gateway or to where your CSX line is. So maybe that's where we talk about some other technology like light rail to connect the two ends and let the rest be, a different technology. But I think that all this stuff is going to be talked about, I'm sure.
For years?
Well, I don't think that we should suddenly stop what we're doing in other areas like enhancing the bus system and all that and do this. I think we need to keep doing this, and I think we do need to move forward and talk about it, and hopefully that we won't talk about it that long, and we'll say, because one of the big problems FDOT has is we have not said that this is a priority. When you say, well, why aren't you doing transit, especially in Hillsborough County, they're saying, take the money for the roads and do the rail. Well, there is no project yet. So we need to decide, one, do we want to do this? Where do we want to do it? What's the technology? And then start from that point and work with FDOT. Because CSX was clear, they want to work with a regional entity like FDOT. They don't want to work with each county separately. Just exactly like they did in Orlando, FDOT was involved. So I can't answer your question, but I think there's momentum. And again, on the 6th, I think we'll have a much better idea, because that's the next discussion that'll go into a lot of details about this with that TMA group of the MPOs.
Thank you, Commissioner. I saw you perk up when you mentioned that, so I knew that the question was coming. And Pinellas Park has said that from the start, even through Green Lights. Why isn't CSX more integrated? But as you recall, there were segments of CSX that were in the Green Light light rail plan. When we get to that conversation, you still have the issue of funding the operations. How we're going to fund it. So it'll be a good conversation when it gets back there. But it is, like you said, CSX has never come forward and said
Right.
maybe we'll.
One of the things we did is, and we're going to hand out the paper at the meeting on the 6th, is talk to Orlando, and we talked to the people that are running Sunrail to get a definitive history of every step they took.
How are they doing on their ridership?
They are very close to what their projections were. The last time I heard, they were like just 200 less than what they were projecting. They obviously think that they're doing good because they're starting construction on Phase 2 and planning for Phase 3. And one part of connecting it to the airport, so they're moving forward. I will tell you, their system's different than ours. I think engine-pulling cars isn't what we need. We need, like, self-propelled cars that look like light rail but aren't actually light rail, but like DMUs or something like that, because it's a more urban system. They're like 61 miles long, their ultimate system, just going in one long line. So it's different. Ours actually connects all our centers better.
Let me ask a question on your funding slide. You have local and or state and federal, I think. How much local do you have now?
Well, right this minute, I have Hernando, and, well, the total ask was $200,000 local. I have Hillsborough, we have a check from them already. Hernando, Citrus said they're giving us a check. I'm kind of waiting for Pinellas and Pasco.
Have you made the ask?
Oh, yeah. Well, I have not turned in the invoice request yet because we've been so busy getting ready for our T-BARTA board meeting, but I'm going to do it next week. No, I'm sorry, I have turned it into Pinellas.
For this fiscal year?
Yes.
Okay.
That's already been turned in. I haven't turned in Pasco, or there was one other county, I can't remember, Manatee yet.
What was your Pinellas request?
It was, I believe, $49,000.
Okay. The other question I had for you is on the TBX.
Mm-hmm.
They are now incorporating express bus into those lanes because that was something we asked for.
Yes, they said that they would incorporate that into. Now, they're not saying they're going to pay for the buses, but they will incorporate that into the express lanes.
Okay, and is most of the pushback coming from this kind of resistance to a Lexus lane that the average person can't afford, and they'll say, talk to the
yeah, I got it. Yeah, well, that's one. It's more that political philosophy of. But I can tell you, when I look at the cars, like in the lanes in Miami, I don't see any difference in the cars in the express lane, other than on that particular day, somebody needs to get somewhere quicker.
In Tampa, I know there is, in some neighborhoods,
yes,
affected by construction. That's an issue.
Right.
And the opponents brought that over to Pinellas,
mm-hmm.
and were saying, all the areas in the St. Pete CRA would be affected, which is not true.
No, there's a lot of information that's questionable. Very quickly, okay, the express lanes, the only place that it's going to affect something that isn't already affected is in the interchange in downtown Tampa. North of Martin Luther King through Seminole Heights, the express lanes are going to be completely within the existing right-of-way. Yes, they'll probably hear noise when they're building them, but it's not going out of the right-of-way. It also is not going out of the right-of-way toward Pinellas in that part because the envelope's already created with the construction going on now. There's a big green space in the center that has room for rail transit and 2 express lanes in each direction. Same thing going out I-4, the space is already there. There's about 30 houses in Tampa Heights that would be affected. I've already looked at them. I'd say there's like 10 that are worth moving maybe, and the rest are like 60s concrete block duplexes or things like that.
Well, we've had briefings, and we
Yeah.
understand that, but the media, the social media,
Yes, I know.
think is being lost, because I had folks light up my Facebook page.
No, there's
taking away lanes in South St. Pete, and that was never part of the plan.
They're never taking any lanes away. The express lanes are in addition to the existing general purpose lanes. And what it will do is, by the way our region works, a lot of traffic comes through Hillsborough and Pinellas to go other places. So that traffic will just keep going and not mix with the local traffic, which will actually, in the long run, help those neighborhoods by taking traffic off. Anyway.
Well, thank you, Ray. Our
You're
illustrious
welcome.
chair has arrived. Ray's representative is Steve Barta presentation. I don't know if there are any other questions from the committee. All right. Well, thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Okay.
We're on the action items now.
My apologies, guys. I was at the TDC meeting this morning where they were talking about the church development Fed Tech 6 cents. So I had to use my deputy hat this morning. So my apologies. I really wanted to be here earlier for the finance committee discussion. Sorry, I couldn't have made it. So next item on our agenda is the meeting minutes of September 16th. Are there any corrections?
Move approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Item number 2 is the meeting schedule for 2016. We did get a new one that showed a cancellation of the December meeting because it was so close to the holidays. So is everybody okay with that?
Yes.
I had mentioned that the January meeting is a conflict.
Okay. So that's kind of up in the air, to be determined.
Is that okay then?
No, it's, there's some other standing meetings on that Friday.
It's a Friday.
It's a Friday, the 15th is a Friday.
The normal day in January would be January 19th, but
That's an okay day.
that is the day that we will be in Tallahassee, at least for Transportation Disadvantage and Transit Day in Tallahassee. So,
Isn't that an okay day?
I think it's 18.
well, the normal Wednesday of the MLK week is out because we'll be in Tallahassee, and so then we looked at the 15th as a possibility, but
Okay, so with the removal of December and the to be determined for January, can I have a motion?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Next item would be the East Lake Transportation Alternatives Pilot.
Okay.
And maybe what we can do is let Brad get through the presentation, because I know there's going to probably be a lot of discussion on this item.
yes, and we'll move through it quickly. So after you just heard that discussion of the T-BARTA master plan and discussion about the plans, PSA is actually recommending a specific pilot program. The PSTA board, you asked us to do this as part of the Path Forward Strategic Plan, as part of our proposed adjustments and elimination of our low-performing routes. The PSA board asked staff to look at transportation alternatives for all those areas that are affected. And so we have come up with this pilot program that I'm going to outline for you. In your packet is a 3-page detailed description of the pilot program that we have also shared with all of the delegation members of our state legislature from Pinellas County about this program. We are proposing a transportation alternatives for the East Lake neighborhood. East Lake neighborhood, as defined in this map, is now the largest neighborhood in Pinellas County without any PSTA regular bus service. As you know, a week ago, the East Lake Connector, one of PSTA's lowest performing routes, was discontinued after PSTA voted, the board voted to do that back in August. And so that service no longer operates in that area. What we're proposing is an alternative we believe, we do believe, can provide folks that used to use that route with a viable alternative, transportation alternative at a substantially lower cost. It's a 3-tiered proposal, option A, B, and C, that would be available to customers in East Lake. Option A exists and operates today. It has been operating and it operates today. It is known as the East Lake Shuttle, and it is a reserve taxi cab operation. It costs the same as the regular PSTA bus fare. So for the same cost as a regular bus, residents of East Lake can travel anywhere in East Lake to one of 2 bus stop locations. The shops at Boot Ranch, down here just outside of Oldsmar, or Tarpon Mall on US 19 in Tarpon Springs where there's a Publix. Those are 2 PSTA bus stops where folks can access other PSTA bus services. Up in Tarpon Springs, they can access Route 19, our most popular route, up and down US 19. And then here they can access the connector, the Oldsmar connector that goes over to Hillsborough County, or the 62. Route 62 goes to Boot Ranch. So again, for $2.25, the same cost as they would have had to pay on the bus that used to run, they can get a taxi cab to come pick them up and take them to that location. Catch is that they have to call the day before and make a reservation for this service, which when we were out in East Lake and throughout our public input process, which was substantial in August, about these route changes, we heard mixed reviews of that service that operates from customers. That because they had to make a reservation the day before, we heard some complaints that the yellow cabs were late or at some point didn't come, or that they would not remember that they had to make a reservation the day before. They would maybe make one reservation to go to Boot Ranch, and then they would forget to make the reservation to come back home, or things like some issues like that. So we're proposing to layer on 2 additional options for folks. Option B is a transportation network company. Has anyone ever heard that term before? Does anyone know what that means? Yes, Uber. I'm maybe trying to do messaging and not say those words. Yes, there are new companies out there that, like Uber and Lyft and others. I heard at the track meeting yesterday where this was very positively received. There's another app that has come out where you can get a service the same day using your smartphone and a credit card. How many of you have used Uber? Outstanding. So, how many of you are familiar with what Uber is? Okay. Uber requires you to have an app on your smartphone. And then with that app, you input your credit card information. You have to have a credit card, and you can input that into the Uber app, and then you press the button, and a car will come and take you to your destination. It does not take cash, it only takes credit card, and you must have the smartphone app. But it provides real-time transportation in growing numbers in Pinellas County. And in Eastlake, they have very good service. So I think if you look on your Uber app right now, in Eastlake, the wait time is only about 10 minutes to get a ride. So that's often the time. We've been working closely and very appreciative of the time that Uber has spent with us. They have given us an estimate that the average trip, again, same parameters, anywhere in Eastlake to Boot Ranch or Tarpon Mall only to connect to the PSDA buses. The average trip on Uber, that distance, is $7. PSDA's program will discount the fare by a maximum of $3, leaving the customer to pay approximately $4. If the Uber trip is more than the average, say it's $9, PSDA would still subsidize or buy down the fare only $3, so the customer would pay $6. But the average, according to Uber, to these two destinations would be $4. Positive is real time. You can request it in maybe 10 minutes, 10 or 15 minutes, it'll come and get you. The negative is you need a smartphone and you need a credit card. You cannot pay cash. So we have layered on option C. Option C is essentially the same thing as a transportation network company, but with a taxi cab. And we've had discussions with 2 cab companies, and we're open and willing to have discussions with any other cab company. Both Clearwater United Cab and Clearwater Yellow Cab have apps that are quite similar to Uber. But instead of a private car, you're getting a taxi cab to come get you. You can also just dial the regular telephone number for a cab company, and they'll come pick you up. And the same would apply. PSDA will discount the cab fare by a maximum of $3 from anywhere in Eastlake to either of these 2 locations. The positive about a taxi cab is that you can pay cash. You don't need a credit card, and you don't even need a smartphone. You can call the number, you can use their app, or you can just dial the telephone number and make a reservation, and you can do it the same day. Clearwater United Cab, according to their app, which I have, does have a number of cabs up in northern Pinellas County, so the time would be fairly quick to get it. The downside is that taxi cab rates in Pinellas County are about double the cost of Uber. Uber rates are the same distance. So the average cost for a cab ride in Eastlake to these 2 locations is estimated by the cab companies to cost $12. So a discount of $3 by PSDA still has a $9 cost to the customer. So the customer has 3 options. $2.25, but you have to call the day before. $4, but you need a credit card, or perhaps $9 cash. And you can get still access to to the PSDA transit system. The reason we have selected Eastlake for this pilot program, and it is a pilot program in the sense that we're going to test this model, and then if it's successful, and we believe it will be, we would look to expand this to other areas of the county as a transportation alternative. The reason we selected this is the one area of Pinellas County that has no bus service anymore, has no alternative for those folks that were riding it. Some 30,000 people live in the Eastlake neighborhood, shaded in blue. PSDA board required us to look at transportation alternatives for any areas that were affected by our route changes, but this is saving PSDA substantial amounts of money versus the very inefficient bus service we were providing. This pilot program is estimated to cost less than $40,000 a year versus the $400,000 a year that we were spending on the relatively little utilized Eastlake connector bus. So as you probably know, there have been lots of debates and discussion about these transportation network companies and such as Uber. There was a lot of questions asked of me at the Pinellas Legislative Delegation meeting about a month ago about exactly how this program might work. I'm very thankful to my staff who have worked very hard on working with Uber and the cab companies to ensure that TSCA provides a, quote, level playing field in what we require of our partners to provide this transportation alternative. So what we are proposing to do is to have the same contract, the exact same contract with any cab company or any transportation network company that wants to provide service in this area and that is essentially willing or open to taking a discount, providing a discount of up to $3 to customers who use them. From PSCA's contract, we are going to require the same level of insurance, the same level of background checks, and all the same reporting requirements. It's the exact same contract the cabs will sign, Uber will sign, or any other entity wants to sign. Now, what PSCA cannot control is the laws that exist in Pinellas County that cover these different transportation alternatives, nor are the transportation alternatives operating exactly the same way. So, while PSCA's contract requires the same level of background checks, the fact remains that taxi cab companies that operate in Pinellas County, they've told us, all do a level 2 background check on their drivers as required only in the city of St. Petersburg. There is no requirement for background checks that are enforced out in Pinellas County outside of St. Petersburg, but since the greatest demand for taxi cab services is in St. Pete, all the cab companies we've talked to go ahead and get all of their drivers a fingerprint background check done by the city of St. Petersburg Police Department. They just do that, as of course, a matter of course, to operate in Pinellas County, because that's the only way you can operate a cab in St. Pete. Eastlake, of course, is not in St. Petersburg, so there's no requirement technically for cabs or Uber to have a background check, but they do. The cabs do. Uber does a very extensive background check, but it's all online. Their drivers are private citizens who have typically other jobs, and they are using their own vehicle. They sign up to drive for Uber online. They do an extensive 2-week background check, but of course they don't do a fingerprint. And they don't have, so it is different. That's not anything that PSCA can control. Our requirement is to have a background check consistent with what we require in our DART contracts. But again, there is the St. Petersburg law, which the City Council of St. Petersburg is looking at on the background checks, that is different between cabs and the TNCs. On the insurance, that's different too. PSCA's requirement is the same, and both TNCs and a taxi cab meet those requirements, but because, like for example, Uber or the TNCs operate with their own vehicles, the insurance that Uber provides is different than what the cabs provide. Cabs is a more traditional auto insurance that covers them 24/7, all the time. The Uber insurance only covers when the person is driving for Uber, has the app on and has accepted a trip and is picking the passenger up, or taking it, or on their way to pick the passenger up and then taking the passenger. The liability for any damage or anything that happens to the Uber driver's personal car is not covered by Uber. It's covered by the citizen, the person that is driving. Uber does not believe, although this is being debated right now, and was, as Alan Zivit told me at the last conference he was at, hotly debated by all of the municipal attorneys, whether or not the Uber drivers are employees of Uber or not. Again, so PSDA is requiring the same level, but there are differences. So, just in summary, why is PSDA doing this? PSDA has been and continues to be on the cutting edge as far as trying to provide innovative transportation solutions to Pinellas County. We are not the bus company, although we do run the buses in Pinellas County. We provide transportation alternatives to our citizens. And it's incumbent, and the PSDA board asks us to look at alternatives for folks in the most efficient way. Running a bus in all parts of Pinellas County is not the most efficient use of our resources. And so this proposal is a much lower cost, more efficient way to provide alternatives. These TNC companies are here to stay. They are growing. I don't believe it is the right thing for PSDA to ignore them or to act like they don't exist. They've been great to work with. They're very positive about their relationship with public transportation and how they can benefit us. And many transit systems around the United States, innovative transit systems around the United States, are all trying to do this kind of arrangement. PSDA, in my estimation, will be the first to actually have a program where we discount the fares on Uber. Of course, as you know, Pinellas County does not have some of the regulatory restrictions that Hillsborough County does. HART is looking to do an RFP for first mile, last mile kind of partners like this, which this is exactly models what we're trying to do here in Eastlake, getting people to their home from connect the last mile from Boot Ranch to their home is exactly what we're proposing to do, but we're able to do this on our pilot program a little bit different than what HART is doing. I conclude my presentation. This is going to come back to you at your next meeting and then go to the PSA board at your December meeting to approve by the full board.
Question?
Thank you. So going back to the slide that had the map,
Yeah.
that one, so only folks that live in that shaded area can access the program?
Yes.
And what kind of ridership are we projecting to come up with the $40,000 estimate for the pilot?
A conservative estimate, that is assuming everyone, the ridership, which I can get you, I don't have it memorized, the ridership on the former Eastlake Connector bus transitioned to using one of these services.
So what's that in estimated numbers? I don't remember what the ridership was.
Chris, don't be looking it up.
26 a day on average?
26? That's on the shelf, though. We'll find that out.
And when you get that, the average, what do you think the average length of the ride will be as well?
We can figure that out. 7 miles, 6 or 7 miles.
Okay. On the insurance, are you negotiating, well, Uber is national, right? It's one entity that you're negotiating with.
Yeah.
So for their Pinellas drivers in this area, will their insurance requirements be different than the other Uber drivers, or is it already covered? Will their drivers have a different insurance requirement than other Uber drivers, say in Orlando or Miami?
Well, our requirement is to the company that signs our contract, which is Uber. Uber has to provide PSDA with assurances that they have at least a $500,000 liability coverage over their services, and they have $1 million liability.
So it's Uber providing the insurance, not the individual driver?
Correct. Correct.
Okay, thank you.
I just have a comment that I want to share. I've shared it with Brad. In a recent conversation with Senator Landau, and you know from the legislative delegation meeting, he was very cranky about this proposal. And his comments to me were that he absolutely does not want this program in Eastlake unless we can guarantee that the drivers and the vehicles have the same type of insurance as our own bus drivers do, and/or that, what was the other thing, Brad? It was.
Background checks.
And the background checks, that they have the same level of background checks. If we can't tell him, and that's going to be an issue that he'll bring up again, which is why I'm sharing it. We go forward with this proposal, that's going to be an issue that he will constantly be harping on until we can satisfy him that those two requirements are met.
And are they the same? The insurance for Uber versus?
Again, what I said is, from PSDA's perspective, we're requiring the same on both those issues that Senator LaValle has expressed concern about. And those are the issues that are being debated in Tallahassee and across the country. Those two, insurance and background checks for transportation network companies.
So you're
PSDA is
saying that
requiring the same. It's a level playing field. It's the same. The same level of background checks we do on our own drivers. PSDA, on our PSDA bus drivers, we do a level. We don't require fingerprints. We do a level 1 background check, an extensive driving record. The chair of PSDA has asked us to look into the cost benefit of doing fingerprint checks on our drivers, but for a very long period of time, that's what PSDA does for its own employees. So PSDA would require, I think, from our perspective, would meet Senator LaValle's test, but the laws, the way the cabs and Uber operate in Pinellas County today is different. The cabs do, because of St. Pete, go and get a fingerprint done that we don't do, or that other companies, other providers don't have to do.
That's it, I'm just wanted to
And,
make
Do
everybody
you
aware.
feel satisfied with what Brad has said?
Well, frankly, I don't know that we have, I don't know how you regulate what he's asking, because these folks are employees of another entity, not ours. And so from a liability perspective, I don't know how our carrier looks at our contract. I mean, I don't know, is that something you put in the contract? I don't know. I just know that insurance liability follows the driver. EIP follows the driver. So
in our contract, we're essentially very modeled similarly after what we have in our DART paratransit contracts. We will require any entity that we sign a contract, cab or Uber, to have a minimum level of insurance. And there's an indemnity clause that goes along with that about PSDA. From what Commissioner Long and some other commissioners, PSDA board members have told me, they're discussing with Senator LaValle and his concerns. We certainly appreciate that, but we've talked to Uber about a plan B for this pilot program with a TNC that I think before the PSDA board votes in December, we'll have a better sense on whether or not sort of political calculations that maybe cause us not to provide this in Eastlake, but maybe move it to another area of the county. So we're already in discussions about that. But
And obviously, you're going to sit down with Senator LaValle, or you have, or you're going to?
Our plan is for me to do that as well, but I think from talking to board members, I think it's a pretty clear message from where he stands on it.
Well, I'll leave that on the table for you guys. I'm in his ear about something else, so I have to be in his ear about two things. Councilmember Johnson.
Thanks. It sort of sounds like the insurance is not as big a deal as the background checks. And I know we don't do a level 2 fingerprint checks. We don't require that of our taxi contracts. Am I correct there? So if we apply that same language into the contract with Uber, are they going to be able to comply?
Yes. Yes.
So they do a background check for their employees, similar to what we require a taxi cab company to provide for their drivers.
Yes, and similar to what we do for our own employees.
And just confirm for me, because I know I've got this answer before from Al, there's no requirement to do a level 2 fingerprint check on transit agencies in the state of Florida.
That's correct.
Yeah, there isn't a requirement for that for Little League coaches either. It seems crazy to me. But, yeah.
What's the difference between level 1 and level 2?
Well, I think if you talk to a lawyer like Alan or Representative Dudley, who gave me there's a lot of differences, but the general difference is the fingerprint. The level 1 does not have a it is a database lookup of your driver's license and your social security number and other information about yourself, and looks at certain databases, state and national,
Sexual
local.
offenders. Sexual offenders that the level 1 does.
Well, the level 1 does look at certain databases, is my understanding, but then it doesn't have a fingerprint, and the fingerprint depends on who you ask, but it can access additional databases.
And there is, and I don't remember the difference, but I will tell you, there is a difference. Now, for transit, I'm not sure that it's necessary, but I can tell you that I fought this fight for 501c3 youth coaches, because I had an issue with the junior Falcon study, that because he didn't have a level 2. So, but I don't know that it's that as important for transit.
And there's no requirement, as you said, for level 2. One other question. I'm assuming this is all for Uber base, the basic Uber, not the XL or they've got like 4 different levels.
Right. This is
And
just
your
the
mission
Uber
would
X.
be this is for the regular, base level.
I think it's called Uber X.
yeah. And the same thing with Lyft. It's not the plus or whatever they call it.
Right.
It's the lowest level.
That's right.
And so did you say you expect $7 a trip and we're subsidizing 4?
Yes. The minimum cost on Uber is 4. 4? So
7 and 3.
if you're going, I think, less than a mile on Uber, you would pay 4. You would pay $4. And then what we've been told by Uber, and they've looked at their database of all trips they've ever provided in Eastlake, the average is 7. The average cost to Boot Ranch or Tarpon Springs is 7, and we would subsidize just up to 3.
3 out of our budget.
Yeah.
And then 4 out of the customer's pocket.
Yeah.
Okay.
On the same day taxi, how do they get paid their $3 from the customer fare? Do we pay the driver, or do we pay the person who paid it?
Well, it works the same way. If they use the Clearwater, if they use the taxi cab app, we've been told it would work the exact same way. It's all through the app. In fact, the Uber one looked pretty slick. It was like, it will know that based on your GPS that you are in the zone, and if you select Boot Ranch as your destination, it will automatically have a slider that you will say PSCA. You move it over there, and it'll say $4 is your cost. And the same thing on at least the Clearwater United Cab app. I can't seem to get the yellow one on my phone, but I'm trying, and we're meeting with them coming up here. If you're paying cash to the cab, then the driver would just charge you $4, or the cost minus $3, and then Clearwater, whatever cab company, will bill PSDA the $3 at the end of the month. Same thing with Uber. Uber will collect in there all of it, and they give us a monthly bill for the charges.
Yep.
Any other questions for Brad? Is there anything that, given the fact it's coming back to us again, is there anything that, any kind of information we would like him to, he and his staff to research and to bring back to us at the next presentation?
Yeah.
I figured, that's why I'm asking the question.
No, I think it's great. I think it's going to take off. My question is, when you get requests from other parts of the county,
What are we gonna do?
What's the next location that's going to ask for this? I can see folks in South County asking for this too.
Yeah.
So, what is phase 2 if this is successful?
Well, again, we have specifically targeted as a phase 2 or perhaps phase 1, Pinellas Park as a possible alternative to the Route 444 in Pinellas Park area. And Uber is actually giving us a cost estimate, and the cabs are giving us a cost estimate on Pinellas Park. We also identified Clearwater Beach and South St. Pete as sort of future phases where we have first mile, last mile issues. We have a lot more bus service than we do in Eastlake in those areas, but there are gaps or neighborhoods or areas or different. It's different on Clearwater Beach, but they want to get to their hotel or whatever from maybe Island Estates where the trolley ends up. So those would be the areas we look at.
It's going to be interesting.
Yeah.
What if we're more successful than we think? We're looking at 27 people a day or something? What if everybody said, this is terrific, and we have 50 a day?
Well,
It's
it
a
would be a good
problem.
success. It would be a good problem. One of the benefits of Eastlake is,
Yeah. No, you're right.
well, one of the values of testing this out in Eastlake is, I think the possibility that it's relatively small. Remember, this is only applies during the operation of the bus service there, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., Monday through Saturday. The vast majority of Uber trips in Pinellas County
They are at night.
are Friday and Saturday night in downtown St. Petersburg.
At midnight. Correct, at midnight. Get me home safely. Yeah, please.
So, given the reluctance of Senator Latvala to embrace this project, why wouldn't we just think about launching it in the Pinellas Park area and have that be a pilot that just really is very, very successful, and then he maybe rethink it? I'm just saying.
It's possible.
Given
The track committee, the riders who live in Eastlake or in Tarpon Springs, last night, they love it. State Representative Sproles and State Representative Grant think Eastlake is the #1 location for this thing, because that's where they live.
I'm just remembering the dynamics from that last meeting. They weren't friendly.
Again, it's based on where we provide service. We did not eliminate the Route 444. We still are running that in Pinellas Park. Eastlake has nothing, but I certainly am aware.
Eastlake still does have the shuttle.
It has a taxi. Yeah.
The taxi, the option A
Yes.
is available.
It has no bus.
I'm sorry, that's the prior day. You have to request it the prior day.
Yes.
But maybe we need to have, and of course Commissioner Long would be a part of this, our legislative committee talk about how we can make Senator Latvala the champion of this really new way of looking at transportation. And really, I think in the long run, if he is the champion and not someone else, he might be supportive. You know what I'm saying? Do you know where I'm going?
I do understand what you're saying, the anxiety from the members, not just him, but Representative Dudley weighed in, Senator Joyner was just apoplectic over it, Roussan got into the mix, and part of their argument was, why are we subsidizing with public money this very affluent area of our county? That was as big of an issue as the insurance and the background check.
Well, that's why I think you have to have a phase 2 lined up. But my two concerns are, number one, the budget, because I think this is going to be wildly successful. I used Uber for the first time on our trip to Atlanta. Didn't even rent a car, and I will never rent a car again.
It was fabulous.
And it was cheaper than the taxis. I know the taxi companies hate it when I say that. But they talked about us being innovative last year in the whole green light, and this is
Right.
being innovative, working with the private sector. So I think to allay some of his concerns, we said, look, we're looking at other areas of county where we can use this, but that area, we're going to decrease their service significantly. I think this is a way to counter that. I understand the dynamics and the politics of what's happening on that legislative delegation, but I don't know how we don't do this.
Plus, we also, to add to that, you taking the person's finances out of the situation, you've also got a lot of, I think, elderly folks that live in that area, condo alone,
Disabled.
not driving, not able to get out type thing. Now you've got door-to-door service for those folks. So while it may not be low income, you've got other things that you're dealing with. And, I mean, the idea is to provide, as you said, the innovation. We're looking at each neighborhood. What does that neighborhood need? This neighborhood may be better from an income perspective, but they may have another need. And so we're trying to provide it, just like we did the East Lake Shuttle. That's why we did that, was we tried to look at the trolley. There was a different need for that. And it's looking at all of those things and trying to look at it neighborhood by neighborhood, area by area, and provide what their need is. And South St. Pete or other areas or Laleman or Kennett City or whatever may not have the same needs or may need 3 different types of transportation. I'm sorry, Council.
To answer Commissioner Long's question about from Luzon and Dudley, we are not providing at midnight a ride home from
Right.
the bar. This service only is during the hours of operation and only to or from those 2 shopping centers.
Right.
But the question that I think they would ask is, well, how do we know that that's where they're going to or from in the time frame? How do we know that their system is, we're not paying for a trip that occurred at midnight? And that's kind of to Mr. Miller. Have we talked to the taxi companies or Uber about how do we know, how are they going to control that this is only during bus hours, 7 to 7?
It is magical the way the Uber thing works. It just will shut off at 7, and you won't be able to get the distance.
So
You'll be able to get it.
that's part of the answer to that concern. The other concern was it only works to one or from one of these 2 locations. So I think that's part of the answer on that side.
I think you're right on that one. It's pretty simplistic.
Do we have anything else that we need to vote on for the night?
We're not voting on any of this, I think. This is an informational item. The next items are the community bus plan review and the system redesign. I don't think requires votes, right?
Right. Those will both come back to you.
Right.
Well, the system redesign will come to you on December 9th.
So you need to leave, Commissioner.
Sorry, and the meeting got started late.
Well, I will just tell you, since you're leaving, I just wanted to let you guys know this is probably my last planning committee. In November, because it moved from Veterans Day to the following week, it's falling on the same day as the Florida League of Cities Mayor's Roundtable that I just joined and have to be at in Orlando. So I won't be here for the next planning, and in our nominating committees, I have to step down from planning and let someone else join. I've been here for, I don't know, 5 or 7 years or something. So I was giving somebody else the chance to participate, so it's been a pleasure serving with you on time.
Thank you,
Thank
same
you for your
here.
leadership.
Okay, next item is the community bus plan review.
During our discussion of the Phase 1 system redesign, you all had asked for us to come back with a refresher on the community bus plan, so that's what I'm here to do today.
Are we eating lunch?
know we said it was gonna be late.
There's some, granola bars back there.
No, really, did you order any lunch?
No.
We did not.
Okay.
We did not.
Okay.
I apologize for that.
No. Go ahead, sorry.
So the 2013 bus plan was based on a set of goals and objectives that would lead us to the development of a thoughtful, comprehensive plan that could suit various funding scenarios and was based on extensive public outreach and detailed technical analysis. The plan included a new revenue scenario and an overarching network design concept that transformed PSTA's system from a hub network to a grid network. It was focused on streamlining services to improve efficiency and on improving frequencies and span of service to improve the customer experience. The new revenue scenario, which included over 65% more service, and this map should look familiar, is what we were working toward during the year following the bus plan completion. It was based on a set of guiding principles designed to maximize our resources and improve service delivery. And as part of the implementation plan for this new revenue scenario, the things we focused on in the early years of the implementation plan were improving evening and weekend service. And we did that because those are things we could do quickly with our existing bus fleet, and also because they were some of the top improvements requested by the public. The the bus plan also included, a no new revenue scenario, which is still based on those same guiding principles, but because we had less resources, focused the improvements on the core network, and then for the rest of the system, looked to streamline. Fast forwarding to today, in the Path Forward strategic plan, many of the same goals from the bus plan are included in the Path Forward plan. We are looking at maximizing our financial resources, sustainable bus capital program, improving service delivery and efficiency through system redesign, and then implementing some premium transit projects, albeit more incrementally than was envisioned as part of the new revenue scenario. Our awesome finance department has identified some budget efficiencies.
That's the official name now?
Awesome, that's right.
Okay.
Has identified some budget efficiencies that will allow us to make some small increases in service over a period of time. And we are looking at where to do that as part of our system redesign work plan, and that was originally a 10-phase plan, but is now a 3-phase plan. Phase 1, which was eliminating those inefficient routes, has already been implemented. Phase 2, which you'll hear more about from Cassandra next, includes the grid network in downtown St. Petersburg. And then Phase 3 will look at the rest of streamlining services through the rest of our system and to be implemented in October 2016. To follow on that, we will be looking at implementing some of those premium projects, the Central Avenue BRT, the Clearwater Beach TIA Express service, and then also looking at improving our Jolly Trolley and circulator services.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Okay, how are we funding that?
Which thing?
Those additional improvements.
Well, we are still identifying funding sources for some of these. Central Avenue BRT, we have some funding identified in the budget, and then are seeking some state funding for the rest of the design, and that's one of our legislative priorities as well, for federal and state funding.
So is that at the $200K that we set aside every year?
No.
Or is that a different?
No.
What line is it in?
The cost of the Central Avenue BRT is in the capital reserve, so that's part of, where we're pulling the buses from, the bus replacements, as well as we set aside our local match for that program, so that as we apply to federal and state grant funding sources, we have that local match ready to go.
Okay, so can we get just a little spreadsheet that shows, like for the Central Avenue BRT, how much local funding we've already set aside, how much we're expecting from other sources?
4.5, and...
We set aside 4.5? It's in the bank for Central Avenue BRT. Were those our funds, or was that federal grants?
That's all.
We've done that. Okay, so how much, what's the delta for Central Avenue? How much do we need to finish the project?
It's 12 and a half, plus $1 million from the DOT for the design. So 13.
That's all capital.
That's all
not
one time,
operating.
that's all one time or capital. So that's
Okay.
environmental engineering and capital.
So we can just pop that in a little spreadsheet for all three projects?
Sure.
We're actually, for the Central Avenue BRT project, we're actually putting together a standalone presentation on that project with those cost, capital and operating cost assumptions in there, and how the plan is to pay for that. Since that is our legislative priority, we're trying to get the $1 million from the state right now, and we're hoping to get St. Pete City Council and the PSBA to vote on that project, because that will help us with our federal ask. If the feds will want to see that project is supported in order to get us the $8 million that we're expecting them to provide.
Yeah, I just want to see the buckets. That would help me to
Yeah.
understand where we're going. But
Yep.
what about the Clearwater Beach? Can you give me?
Clearwater Beach is an operating ask, right, priority to the state, not federal, but to the state right now, and that would be contracted out. So the idea would be we would do an RFP and contract out an express bus service between Clearwater Beach and the airport. It has a pretty high annual price tag of $2 million, $2.1 million, and that makes it a little harder for the legislature to act on that. But Representative Chris Latvala has put that in as a priority project, and is sort of the champion for that right now.
So we're looking for state funding on that? No PSDA funding?
We've asked for the full $2.1 million annually as an urban corridor grant. That's probably a tough lift for the state, so it probably will end up being hopefully a partnership, maybe some TDC or private money from the hotels, something like that, plus DOT money,
They're not real happy right now.
a combination.
And not to
of
hold
things.
us up, but quickly on Jolly Trolley, giving you 50,000 foot on that. The cost and.
Well, so for the Jolly Trolley, we're proposing to run that 7 days a week rather than the 3 days a week on the north coastal route of the Jolly Trolley from Clearwater to Tarpon Springs. It runs 3 days a week, and we would want to run that 7 days a week, combining it with the Route 66. And that will not happen next October because the Jolly Trolley or whoever operates that service under a contract with PSDA doesn't have enough trolleys to run it 7 days a week yet. So we put that in another category because we're going to do we're planning to do an RFP next year and select either the Jolly Trolley or another contractor to run that, and they're going to need time to get those trolleys delivered. Circulation enhancements is code words for like the Lono circulator that we might run electric buses on in St. Petersburg, or another circulator in St. Petersburg, perhaps even in Clearwater, that might be beyond the 3 phases till beyond next October.
Okay. Thank you for that background.
So our planning department, including planning and public outreach and scheduling teams, have already started on the October 2016 system redesign, which is mainly focused on streamlining. We are looking at where we can remove underutilized deviations, where we can consolidate bus stops to improve speeds and to save hours, and then where we would reinvest those hours. And most likely that would be in evening and weekend service expansions because we can use our existing bus fleet. We can look at how to improve overcrowded routes, but because that does require additional buses, that's something we have to look at in terms of funding. Specific proposals that have come to us that are already under review are looking at splitting some of our very long routes, like the Route 19 and the Route 52. As Brad just mentioned, combining segments of the Route 66 with the Jolly Trolley to have consistent service. And then also looking at our, now two lowest performing routes, the Route 444 and Route 58, to see if we can improve the efficiency of those services. So, this is the last slide, and the point of this is to say that by 2017, we will actually have implemented some of those guiding principles that were envisioned or that were used as the foundation for the bus plan. We will have that efficient grid network in downtown St. Petersburg, and we will have improved Spanish service and the weekend service coverage. The one thing, as you can see, that we're not able to do is increase the frequencies because of that additional funding requirement for buses and operations. So, I can turn it back to the chair for any questions.
In this, on this chart, how are we going to fund the improved Spanish, overall Spanish service and the weekend Spanish service?
That would be in,
How are we going to fund it?
with the savings we identify either through the budget efficiencies or through streamlining other services. And those would be implemented throughout the county in targeted areas.
It's not a system-wide improvement. This is route by route, bit by bit, trying to get down the road.
How would the Jolly Trolley combine with the Route 66? How will that work? Do they connect up in Clearwater or down?
Yeah.
Do they just go on up from there?
It would be the section that goes from Tarpon Springs to Parksville Terminal in Clearwater, and it ties in with that Clearwater Beach service. The Route 66 now heads south, and what the bus plan had envisioned was that that route would be split, and so the southern portion would be a different route. So maybe that's still a Route 66, and the northern portion is the Jolly Trolley, for example. And then it involves a little bit of realignment of through Dunedin to make sure it serves the Jolly Trolley route as it is today.
So is it correct to look at this and say that these are incremental improvements,
They are.
whereas green light would have been,
That is correct.
incremental as we can fund it,
Yes.
hoping fuel prices stay where they are, and yada, yada. Okay.
Any other questions or comments?
The whole CSX deal, when do we start looking at that, talking about it? I mean,
Well, we're talking about it now.
Well, the conversation's out, talking about how you fund it and how it might be a part of our bus plan going forward, or does this start green light all over again?
No, I mean, I think you have to go back and do a little bit
MPO.
more, work on that.
Talking about it?
The first thing is that we have offered to the MPO to work together on that because it's not just the transportation issue, it's land use issue. The other piece of that is the three MPOs and the TMA are talking about also funding a joint look at that purchase because it does have to be a regional issue.
Can it run as light rail in terms of frequency, or is it strictly commuter? Because so you can't get the 10-minute, 15-minute.
Well, based on the presentation that CSX gave to the TMA back a month ago, they were proposing to still run freight on it and lease back the rights to run freight trains on the lines on a limited basis. And they said, what CSX said was that they would only allow for commuter rail operation compliant with the Federal Railroad Administration, which is not light rail. But still needs to be reviewed.
And I think what you're asking is, what Brad's talking about is the vehicle type, and you're talking about the level of service.
Right.
Those are two different questions. And they don't, it's a mix and match. So can you offer frequent service using a FRA compliant vehicle? Yes. Is it going to be 10 minutes? Probably not. Even when we looked at, our other projects, they weren't 10 minutes, all day long.
And the big concern is that good job.
Okay.
It's a longer-term vision.
It is a first step, though.
It's a great opportunity.
To run using DMUs on that route at a frequency, maybe even 15 minutes. It's a single track going down through there, so you've had problems passing, going both directions, potentially.
We will probably need a whole entire workshop about this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There is
Just wondering when we're going to get to that
do that?
conversation.
And the
Yeah.
MPO did talk about it.
There is a TMA discussion of this on the 6th of November.
Yes.
And we do
Special meeting
participate in that
for
call.
that.
Okay, any other?
It strikes me that the planning of the communities and so forth around the tracks are going to be greatly affected by this. That's going to be it.
I had trouble hearing what you just said, Mark.
The planning of the communities, or the CC, whatever it is, when they figure out where all these things are going to go, I mean, they had plans where everything should be with green light, and now this is going to be a whole different type of planning about where they want things to develop and grow and so forth. It's going to be huge.
Could be. Now, the reason we, oh, I'm sorry.
Well, no, my comment is not about CSX, it's about this plan.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say too. Go ahead.
Well, thank you, and I just want to apologize that the 4 board members that are here, planning committee members that are here, we're all here in 2012, I think, and lived through the community bus plan, so you guys know it. This presentation was really requested by some of the other board members who, following the August meeting where we had a large crowd at the meeting about changing the routes, wanted to know how we were coming up with these plans, which seemed like they weren't being positive for the organization. And so, as we've been saying all along, and what Heather's presentation was intended to show was, we are following the community bus plan that was developed in great detail and with different scenarios and following different principles that will ultimately streamline the service and make it better. Phase 1 wasn't necessarily a walk in the park because it was eliminating the low-performing routes. But from here on, it is actually is going to be provided by, it's going to be improving the overall service. Right now, as Chair Johnson has told me, there is somewhere on our website that where you try to go to the community bus plan and download documents, and it says on there to call Heather. When you click on it, it says call Heather Sovish, and Heather has just done an amazing job. She has memorized each of the scenarios on the community bus plan in a very impressive way. So, and while she really questions me on this, I wanted to show this last slide that shows that despite green light not passing and no additional revenues, but with the help of an awesome finance department, we are incrementally doing 3 out of the 4 goals of the community bus plan we had on the new revenue scenario.
Except to a much smaller degree.
Okay.
I mean, if you've read that, I know,
That's true. That's what Heather said to me, too.
I know, but if you read that and didn't know the community bus plan, you would think, oh, we're meeting all our goals. So I think, see, that's my concern about, because I also asked for a revamp of the community bus plan a couple of months ago. And the reason I did is the same reason those folks asked for it. I think they need the detail to understand why we're doing what we're doing. You all seem to feel differently, so I'm not going to argue the point, but I just think, well, at least Brad does.
And And I think you made an excellent point. We have the path forward, and it was this interim stuff. Now this is the next beyond that. How are we going to respond to what the community has been asking for beyond this stuff that's easy to do?
Yeah, because improving
And-
weekend service,
And
we're not really improving that much of it.
right. And we're not solving the problems that have been in the community, and the community has been expressing, or at least segments of the community has been expressing for a long time.
And so if we
This
have to
is-
get rid of a few things, those same folks making those decisions need to understand why.
Well, I think it's back to that, reaching out to the community, that element of our path forward, communication with the community and really understanding what they want, and then having them understand what the benefits could be to the people of Pinellas. That piece that during Greenlight, we were talking about how it would work, but we really didn't talk enough about how it affected people's lives and what it could do for people's lives for instance, if an investment was made on one of the routes to go to 15-minute service, what kind of an impact would that have on the folks that lived in that area? And the ability of influencing the land use patterns and being more effective in creating walkable communities or supporting that, maybe not throughout the entire county, but in selected areas.
So Sandra, you were going to be dying to say something.
I have so much to say. I'm thinking emotion.
Please, I'm looking at you. I'm giving you the floor.
I think we can do, even in our small budget, do some things to improve weekend service. It's a trade-off, though. It's deciding whether we want to put on late-night service or weekend service. It's a trade-off of, is it going to be the Route 14 or the Route 15? So can we make improvements? Yes. Is it system-wide? No. I mean, we talked about that. I think it is going to take a robust conversation. But my question to you is the presentation that you saw enough of what you were talking about in terms of the details?
No.
So
I don't think it is for the people that have not lived it. I mean, we lived it day in, day out.
Yeah, I think, well,
For
first,
them to make hard choices is what I'm trying to say.
I agree. On this presentation, I just think it needs to be more realistic. And just the word incremental, I think would, we're going to incrementally improve span of service, incrementally improve. So it doesn't look like, green light failed, but we still can do everything because we can't do anything close to what green light would allow us to do. The other thing is, they've got to read the details of that community bus plan, and staff can't simplify it in a PowerPoint.
But
You
a
gotta read it,
workshop or
right?
something, and I just feel like people need to understand where we were trying to go, even if it was the no new revenue service or revenue scenario. I mean, so that when they are making these decisions, they understand that they're meeting the criteria of where we were trying to go. It's pretty hard to buy into it all if you don't know what the ultimate plan was.
Well, I think it's up to the board members to read the plan. So you're going to have new board members next year already. There's been a lot of turnover since the campaign.
The feedback that I got from board members, new board members, was when they said they wanted more information on the community bus plan, it was not necessarily reviewing, reading it, although I think some have actually read it, was trying to understand what we were talking about doing with the 10-phase route change plan, which they viewed very negatively. Like, oh my gosh, we're going to have a room full of
10
angry
times.
people 10 more times. So we kept saying, we're following the principles of the community bus plan, and they wanted to say, so how is this 10 phases, where are we going with these 10 phases, which are now 3, and the idea is they are following the same principles in an incremental way, but we're not making some new thing up, right? And at least in my one-on-ones, discussion with new members, they feel, I think, better than they did back in August. Know where we're going.
Well, that's just the way things are, so it doesn't matter.
Oh, it does, really does. And I think that part of it is that maybe the word pilot needs to be inserted in here to do some of these improvements on a Route 4 or Route 60 or Route 78 goes through Dunedin, to say, how would it change if we implemented the community bus plan on one of those routes? If we fully implemented it, how would it be different? How would the community benefit by that? What would be different about it? Because we have system-wide a fairly weak transit plan in reference to how transit can fully be implemented in an urban community and the benefits that come along with that. So it's.
Are you, let me just see if I can clarify where I think you're going. Are you thinking that maybe we might want to consider doing that full implementation on Line A, if we think it's valued enough so that it can make an impact? Or you want the option?
I would at least want to know what difference it would make. And it's kind of like we don't have, many communities have not been able to implement a light rail system until they had a prototype.
A success story somewhere else.
And
I feel that way too, frankly. That's why I'm asking you this question.
I think it's the same
Because I feel
thing
that way, you got to prove yourself.
on a bus system,
Yep.
on a bus line. That how do you prove that, how do you demonstrate locally the difference that it would make on a bus line? Maybe it's the one, or I mean, something. We're sort of doing that with the CRT, the Central Avenue Trolley, the
Right.
BRT line.
And
to
those
demonstrate.
express to the airport, those would be our two demonstrations. But they're regional, which is different. Like, I mean, not to belabor this, but I can tell you that in North County on when we added the Jolly Trolley coastal line, huge. It was huge to all of those communities along there. Huge. It made a huge difference. Did it make them vote for green light? No. But I think that's because they don't equate Jolly Trolley with PSTA. But it made a huge impact. So I agree that we might want to consider those things and look for those things.
So are you providing this community bus plan update to the full board? Or is it just for us, or where are you going with this next?
But, I mean, generally planning on having this on the full board.
Okay.
We can make some adjustments to provide some more detail and to discuss the incremental nature.
Yeah. I think that's important for them to understand it.
Yeah, agreed.
All right, we good?
Thank you.
Next item is the system redesign, Phase 2, Williams Park.
Got it.
Senator?
So I gave this morning to the Downtown Business Association, 7:30 at the Hampton Inn on Beach Drive. It's great. They're really very well received. I even came after the police in the presentation, so that was really kind of nice. They got to answer all the tough questions. So this is Phase 2, and we're looking at what are we doing in downtown St. Petersburg. We've been in Williams Park for a very long time, and we've been talking about getting out of Williams Park for a very long time. And so here we are. We have been talking to the city, and even they would like us to see a change in how we connect the buses into downtown. They've been looking at a new intermodal facility, and about a year ago, we told them that's not really what we want to do. We want to create this grid system. want to do the best thing that we can for the county and the best thing that we can for downtown St. Petersburg. As Heather talked about, in the community bus plan, we talked about going from the hub to the grid and streamlining some of our routes. Now in 2015, in our service redesign, this is our opportunity to play out that grid in a small area of the county and then translate that to the larger plan. This is what our system looks like now in downtown St. Petersburg. A lot of buses coming in on the First Ave, a lot of buses using 3rd Street and 4th Street, and everything, whether it needs to or not, going to Williams Park. This is what it could be. Buses on every street showing how transit becomes part of the urban fabric, from 5th Avenue North to 6th Avenue South, and from Mirror Lake to the waterfront. This creates access points that we've never had before for our customers. This creates new ways for them to transfer, but also really dovetails nicely with the investments that the city is making in their complete streets, in their bike share program, and all the other transportation improvements that they have planned. I have a couple examples. I know these are hard to read once you. They look really awesome on my screen. I know they're difficult up there. But this is an example of Route 4 of how Route 4 comes up from the south and weaves around downtown, gets into Williams Park, and it isn't streamlined. We take this straight up 3rd, straight down 4th, and really make it come into downtown, be a part of that core, and have all of the other east-west routes connect with it so people can still make their transfers.
So the existing Route 4 does not stop at Williams Park,
It does. They all stop at Williams Park.
but it goes around Williams Park.
It loops
It
around
loops
it.
around it. Yes.
Does it stop
At
there?
Williams Park.
So it makes a circle too?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So this is another example of the Route 14. So again, this is one more route in the existing system coming up 3rd, down 4th, not dispersing it around the downtown. So our concept is to come into downtown the same way that it does now, but once it gets into the downtown area, come across 6th Avenue South and go up 1st instead of 3rd. So this starts to create that grid, and so all of the east-west routes connect with the Route 4, and some of them are going to come all the way first based on our transfer analysis and how people are using the system. This is at this point, it's all data-driven. The next step is to talk to people who use the system about what our proposal is. We have 7 workshops planned. You have the dates later on in the presentation. And we've coordinated this with the City Urban Affairs Office, making sure that we have 3 workshops in South St. Pete, 3 in downtown, and then 1 closer to Grand Central area. Making sure that we are talking to the people who are using the system, but also the communities that the services are in. We will look at, from a technical perspective, also look at those service improvements that we have budgeted in fiscal year 16. So we are going to be asking people, we can look at the data, but what do you really want? What is your trade-off for evening service or weekend service, and what would you like to see most and on which route? This is our proposed schedule. We have our public workshops. This becomes really the kickoff this Saturday at Campbell Park, and we're trying to make sure that these workshops are very accessible to people. We have Saturdays, we have weekdays, we have daytime, we have nighttime, and really trying to get that input from folks. In November, we will take this to our findings to the City Council with a final proposal, and also bring it to this committee and the PSTA board. We're planning for a new routing change to begin on Sunday, February 14th. We will look at changes in Williams Park as early as the beginning of February. This means removing the shelters, putting up temporary signs, but also putting up those other bus stop signs around the city in preparation for that February 14th service change. We have promised the city of St. Petersburg that we will make sure that the park is ready for local Topians. Later in the spring, we will collect our ridership data again with our new stops and look at places where transit amenities make the most sense. So start to install those new shelters, again, combining with the investment that the city is already making in some of their own transit investments and their transportation circulation, such as the bike share. These are just a list of the public workshops. These have been on the buses. The back of the driver panel notice has been up for, I think, a little more than a week. We have published this on our website and a lot of other places. I think it should have been tweeted. And we've been also making other presentations to key stakeholder groups, as I mentioned, the Downtown Business Association this morning, the EDC last week. So with that, I'll take any questions that you might have about how we're moving forward with this.
Questions, Commissioner Walsh?
Yeah,
I
great.
didn't even need to look at it. I knew it was going to be.
No, this is another great initiative staff's working on. I've attended the St. Pete City Council meeting where Brad presented. What about neighborhood associations, Kona? We're now putting the transfers basically in the neighborhoods. So, right?
We're putting in downtown.
Yeah, and those are neighborhoods.
Yes, right.
So have we looped them in, the neighborhood associations? I don't know how many are in that area.
Look at Bob, because he's our.
Yeah,
He's talking to downtown
asking
association.
all of them, they would allow something to talk about.
Okay.
And nothing to get.
Okay. That was my only question. How'd you pick Valentine's Day?
So we do our service changes 3 times a year. February is the month that we do it, and we'd like to not have them too far into the month, so this was
Just happened
the middle
that
of the
way.
month, happened to be on Sunday.
Oh, it is?
It's always
Okay.
on a Sunday. We always do our service changes on a Sunday. It was incidental.
Gotcha. Looking forward to it.
Any other questions or comments? I just have a question, and I already know the direction we're going, so I just ask it because it just popped in my head. Is this grid system, it's hard to tell from the map, and you might be able to answer this too, is this too big of a system to have a trolley service to it? Or like a contracted out, kind of like we do, I know we have the looper down here, but.
Right. So,
It's hard for me to tell from the map. I mean, I know the area, but I don't know it that well.
so some of these routes are very, very long,
Got
and
it.
this is just the very tail end of them. This is not considered even a major service change, so we define our major service
You're just
change.
changing it around.
It's just that very end tail of the
Got
route.
it.
I mean, if you
All right,
show that map.
that's
it's
all I
walkable.
needed to, no, that's all I
Yeah.
needed to know.
So it's got the 52 and the 11 that
They're
go all
just
the way up
ending
to
there or
downtown.
Like the
rerouting through there.
18 goes from downtown Clearwater to Tyrone, comes across the, Pinellas to downtown
Got it.
Petersburg. Yeah, so, yeah, some of them are huge.
Well, and I would also offer the fact, similarly to what Councilmember Joseph Johnson mentioned earlier, and I know you all are working on it, I've seen some articles about it already, but really pushing the marketing of this dynamic change, I think is really important for us. Just like if we were going to change anything else, it's that big. I mean, it's a big change. And so we should, I know you already are, I've been seeing it, I know we're getting the word out, but I just want to reiterate, we should focus on talking about that change and how it improves transportation. And we should be out, as we get community feedback after the change, press releases, a day in the life or something, just stuff. We should be doing a lot of stuff around this to talk about the grid system and how effective it can be. Okay.
One other?
Sure.
Is this cost neutral?
Yes.
Yeah.
No additional dollars?
Not the change itself, but we will be asking people for the improvements, which are the $200K.
Those being shelters,
No, those would be service. The $200K
pay for the
that you
operation.
mentioned earlier, that's the line item for
Mhm.
service enhancements in the 16 budget, that will go into the routes here and will be part of the service change.
Okay.
So it's coming out of something else.
It's
is what
coming
you're
out of
saying.
something else, but the fundamental changes are revenue neutral,
Okay.
the routing.
Okay, future meeting subjects. Frank?
So again, what Pamela just presented will come back to your committee next month, November 18th, for a recommendation to the board at the December 9th board meeting on Williams Park. It dovetails with the St. Pete City Council's endorsement of the same plan at their November 12th council meeting. So the planning committee will meet right after the city council's approved it. But it's important for the PSDA board to approve it as well. So that's the main item there. And then finally, after a long period of time, there will be a recommendation to the planning committee and then a vote by the board on December 9th on the regional fare collection, smart card, and mobile payment system that we're partnering with Hart and other counties on. That and the presentation on the Central Avenue Bus Rapid Transit Project. Major planning.
Okay. Any other business items that we want to add to our agenda in the future?
Just on the grid for downtown, can you include any shelter impacts? I know you mentioned shelters. If there are additional shelters and where they'll be, or
Yeah, what we're proposing, what we talked to the city about is holding off and letting sort of travel patterns emerge after about 6 months before figuring out where we want to put shelters. Because we think transfer activity will change from what they are today. And depending on where people seem to aggregate to transfer and the availability of covered areas, we may not need a shelter there, or we may need a shelter.
Does this go down to the pier?
6 months after, we would look at putting shelters in that location.
does this go to the new pier, or do you depend on the trolley for that?
Well, the Central Avenue trolley right now goes and turns around in the parking lot, what do they call it, the Dolphin and the parking lot there at the pier. So we would still have service there.
Thank you.
Okay.
Just as far as future on the planning committee, I think the things that we were talking about on the end of the community bus plan, we need to somehow put those on our agenda and thinking about kind of the post or the last phase of our path forward, be thinking about for the future.
I would agree with that because we set our plan forward really only for a couple of years. And now have to get revamped. And it might take some lengthy discussion to figure out what next steps are, even though I know you all are still working on today's steps. You know, I recognize that, but I think you're right. I think getting to that next phase. And I think understanding that, again, for the newer people that might stick around for a while, understanding that it's not just this, that there's other pieces coming, presumably.
Well, there could be
Could
other
be.
pieces
Could
coming
be.
if the community
Understands
wants
the
that.
impact, yeah.
Gotta pay for it.
Right. But I think it's important to start having this dialogue.
Future choices.
Right.
That's one other thing.
Sure.
Does it make sense? I think last year was the first year we had an early year off-site work session. Does it make sense to try to plan for that next year, especially since we're going to have new board members and we're moving through the path forward? I guess I'm looking at you.
I'm okay
We
with
did
it.
this one in what, February, January?
February. The last one I covered last, we did in February.
I would say it's probably an every other year thing more than an every year thing, but you tell me, you guys do something every year, don't you?
I think it's worth it just to get outside and get everybody on the same page, and you're going to have at least 2 new board members, Wingate is going off.
Samantha Mayer, starting.
Yeah,
Board.
Holmes went
Yeah.
off. I don't know who else, but I just think it's a good thing to do every year.
I'm good with it.
Just a planning workshop.
We also have a joint meeting now scheduled with the MPO,
For January.
PSDA board and MPO, January 21st.
That might do something, yeah, because that was the thing I was going to bring up.
I think it's good for us to be on the same page first.
No, as an
before
individual board.
we meet with other folks. And I know the timing is what it is, but I just think it's generally a good thing to do.
I'm okay with
Just
that.
kind of reset priorities, here where we are, here's what we're working on. Because you can only do so much of that in a meeting or a committee meeting. So just throw that out there.
Okay, the more conversation, the better. Given that we have a once-a-month meeting at the board level, not everybody is on every committee. Different committees are talking about different things. You're killing yourself trying to make phone calls all the time. I think I'm all about having additional conversations. Finding the time to do it. But maybe you could bring it up maybe you could bring it up on October's board meeting, that we want to do an annual half-day retreat. Maybe it's not full day, half-day.
Yeah, half days.
Strategic planning.
We didn't get good turnout at the last one?
Yeah, we did.
Oh, we did, I'm just
Okay.
saying,
It's difficult. I'm usually pretty good at responding, and the last one, I think I forgot to respond 3 times. She asked, that Rachel asked, I mean, you know, so, but yeah, I'd be okay with that.
I just throw that out there, I think it's good.
And I wanted to say too that, what's something really cool that's been happening at MPO is WIT and Brad have been working together. WIT wanted to have a different kind of PSTA presentation to the MPO. Brad, as well as his predecessor, started going to the MPO meetings and giving a PSTA update at the end of their meetings, you'll remember, in which he's been doing. WIT wanted to pick some specific items of interest to the MPO board members about PSTA and have the PSTA liaison speak to them. So we did that this last MPO meeting. And I felt like it went pretty well. I think I was a little nervous because I walked in a little unprepared. I'll do better next time, but it actually got them asking questions a lot more than they might somebody standing at the podium. And Cassandra, I think you weren't there for whatever reason, but Cassandra was there to answer any of the technical questions. But it really opened up dialogue. I thought it did. Did you not think it opened up dialogue a lot more?
I did, and I thought the best part about it was that it was at the beginning of the meeting.
Yeah, rather
That was
than
the
I'm
best
dead
part.
at
A
the
bit more
end.
focused.
That's why I missed it.
Well, it
It
was
was
the
at the
beginning of the
beginning.
meeting, and then it was on everybody's mind throughout their other decision-making, as opposed to an afterthought.
That's good.
And it, basically, all he wanted us to really cover was the PSTA Heart co-meeting, but I got a long list of other things, and I really felt really good about the dynamic, and I think strategically in the future, it'll be really good too. So I felt it went on for 10 minutes or 15 minutes. I mean, it went on for a while, and that wasn't because I just was doing all the talking. It was because everybody was asking questions.
It's good to go first.
Yeah, so, anything else? No?
Great
Okay.
meeting.
Meeting adjourned. Well, hopefully I can keep my MPO and and hopefully the chairmanship. I just can't do all 3. And somebody else needs to have a chance to get on plan. Yeah, so we'll see.
Are you ready for the election?
Next year? Yes, I am.
Oh, I'm good, thank
That'll
you,
take
appreciate
a
it.
little of your time.
It will, but
Oh, thank you very much.
the MPO thing I'm very excited about, especially with this new dynamic, you know, to try to get us through for that 1 year, building that relationship, which seems to be going
better in different